Hey everyone, we want to welcome you to this podcast, Rhema Seed TV. I'm your host, Don Boyer.
And I'm Melinda Boyer. Welcome.
We are so glad that you're here because we are going to deep dive into some really great topics that's going to stimulate your mind, it's going to feed your soul, and it's going to ignite your spirit. A lot of people play a lot of games.
Especially the blame game.
Right. The blame game. As kids, we probably all grew up playing Monopoly. We played Sorry. We played all kinds of different games. But one game that everybody participates in is the blame game.
Well, I think it keeps everybody, who did what, when,
Well, it's a lot easier to pass the buck. I'll tell you that.
This is true. This is true.
So what we want to look at today is, really, where did the blame game start?
In Genesis 3:13, it says, "Then the Lord asked the woman, 'What have you done?' 'The serpent deceived me,' she replied. 'That's why I ate it.'" So she blamed the serpent. But if you go back a little bit further, it indicates that God was to blame.
Well, the serpent blamed God because he told Eve, did God really say? Right? So he was blaming God's word. He was accusing God's word. He was actually blaming the fact that God lied. Then the blame game started right there, right?
Yeah.
Go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200, right? And then once that game started to play, then all of a sudden now, Eve started playing that game.
People are still blaming Eve. This is why people say it's the woman's fault.
Well, again, what do they do? They're blaming the woman. They're participating in the blame game, right? Because Adam, he did the same thing. He jumped on the Monopoly board of the blame game, and he said, Eve's the one.
Yeah.
I ate it because of her.
Yeah.
Okay, so you may not even remember this, but this was like in 2006.
Uh-oh.
And we were doing our first film, Power Mentorship, and we were doing a lot of outside meetings. We had books going on, and there was just a lot of areas that was up in the air and we were juggling.
Right.
And we had an appointment at a certain time at City Hall. And I don't remember what the appointment was for, but we were running late, and I'm not going to say why, because I'm not going to play the blame game on this show, right? We were running late. And when we got to there, we parked it. I said, we got 3 minutes to get to the meeting. So as we were rushing up the stairs to City Hall, you stopped and you said, look what you made me do. I said, what did I do? You said, I have my pants on inside out. I said, no one's going to notice that. It's going to just look fashionable, right?
Fashionable, right?
Yeah, it's just no one's going to notice. She said, I'm not going to go into the City Hall with my pants inside out. We got to go home, right? So that was a little bit of a blame game. You blame me for putting your pants on. I didn't put your pants on for you.
Well, that's because you rushed me.
Oh, you see it out there. You go again, right? Here is the great thing about the blame game, man. You got so many dynamics you can fall into. I think Parker Brothers should buy this from us. By the way, I think we should get a game called the blame game.
Blame game, right?
I seen a Monopoly Jesus on the game today on Facebook.
You did?
Yeah, it did. It had Monopoly and it had Jesus.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
Well, anyway.
going back to the blame game. Here's where the problem comes in with relationships, whether it is business or personal or even in marriages.
Yeah.
Is they can't grasp the fact. You said this yesterday, we were talking, that how come we never say we're the problem?
I mean, if we just stop for just a minute to understand that instead of blaming somebody else, why aren't we the problem? It's, for instance, here I put my pants inside out, right? Well, if I would have been paying attention, I wouldn't have done that.
I agree with you 100%.
So I take full responsibility for that.
18 years later.
18 years later, yes. But, I think people just don't take the time. They don't take the time to realize that what we're saying and what we're speaking and what we're doing in our lives, it really comes down to us taking responsibility.
Because it's so much easier to blame other people,
Right.
right? And we don't want to ever admit that we could possibly be part of the equation when things go wrong
Or the problem.
or the problem, right? But if you even watch children, look at children. Who taught them how to play the blame game? They're experts at it. Right.
Oh, yeah.
They're always blaming their siblings on that. So when we deep dive into this, not only are we programmed as a society to blame other people, but I believe it's in our DNA. I believe part of that is genetic from the garden, where it's automatically put into our DNA and passed through our genes, that we don't want to take responsibility for our actions, and we want to blame it on other people, and we even blame it on God.
But you know what I found really interesting? I found another verse in Genesis 45:5 where Joseph said, "But don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead to preserve your lives." See, he didn't do the blame game.
No, you're right. And that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And he had every opportunity,
Right.
right? Every opportunity to hold that against his brothers,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I found that really interesting because he didn't blame God. He didn't blame his brothers. He knew that what had happened to him and where he was going. And let me ask you this. Do you think maybe he perceived this to say this is an opportunity for me to help people? And I think that's another avenue where people think instead of blaming somebody, is it an opportunity for us to really realize where we're at maybe in our lives at that time?
Well, we need to put on the mindset of Joseph, because just think about this. So here he is. His father gives him a coat of many colors because he was his father's favorite son. Now he gets that taken away from him, and then he's thrown in the pit. So what is he thinking down in the pit, right? He could be blaming his brothers. He could be blaming a lot of things, but I think his mindset was different.
Well, do you think maybe it came from his father because his father really had a lot of aspirations for him, because he favored him.
Yeah, a lot of dreams, a lot of
Yeah.
hopes for him.
Yeah.
But if you watch Joseph's life, that mindset carried on to when he was in Potiphar's house. And so Potiphar puts him in charge of his house. God begins to bless Potiphar's house, and he begins to prosper in his business. And then the Bible said that Joseph was a very good-looking young man, very well built.
Right.
So Potiphar's wife, right, sort of look at him in a different way, right? And then falsely accuse him. Now Joseph ends up in prison for something that he didn't do.
Right.
What was his mindset there? He still had that mindset that I'm on my way to the palace.
Yeah.
And even when he was in prison, he prospered there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that had to do was because he did not partake. He refused to be a participant in the blame game.
Yeah.
And I think that we can harbor, I think that we can influence, I think we can induce God's blessings in our life if we don't play that game.
Yeah. I think that's really important, because when people put that blame on somebody, it's almost a strike, right?
It is a strike. Yeah, it is that area of almost cursing them,
Right.
putting a curse on them.
Right.
It's your fault. This is the reason why. And, a lot of people, when they're going through things, they'll look and blame God. And let me tell you something. God is never the problem. He is always the solution. You need to write that down. You need to put that on a piece of paper and put it in your bathroom where you see that every morning and realize that God is not the problem. He is always the solution. So, people will be believing God for deliverance.
Right.
And then it's not happening like they think that it should or as fast. And then they start blaming God. God, I've been faithful to church. I've been faithful doing this. So how come it hasn't come? They're blaming God. Or someone blaming God for divine healing. And healing's not coming right away. But they said, I'm confessing the word. I'm standing on his word. I'm believing it. I'm faithful. All these years, God, why hasn't my healing manifest, right? And really, why are you talking to God about that? Because he's not your problem.
Yeah.
He's not the one that's holding up the healing.
Yeah.
He's not the one that's holding up the deliverance.
Right.
Right? The enemy, the devil's got people turned that around.
Yeah.
It's the devil that's the enemy.
Yeah.
So we need to be talking about to the devil.
Yeah.
And to Satan and telling him to take his hands off of our healing, off of our deliverance, because God is the solution. He's never the problem.
Yeah.
I'm preaching myself happy here. How about you?
Well, it's really interesting because I find it that because people blame God so much, and when you have that free will, it's you making those choices. It's
Always.
not God.
Yeah.
Right?
Always.
So when you make those choices, you can't blame anybody else for those choices that whether you or me or the kids or anybody go and do. And it's not God making them do that. It's their free will.
Yeah.
Right? But when they come back and they say, well, somebody made me drink last night, or somebody made me do those drugs last night. No, you did it yourself because you chose to do that.
I'm going to tell you something. Flip Wilson back in the 70s, he's got the trademark on the devil made me do it. So you can't use that one today, okay? So just forget about it. But you're right.
Yeah.
It was we made that choice ourselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what really grace and mercy is all about.
Mm.
Hebrews tells us that we have a high priest that understands our weaknesses, our infirmities. And it tells us to go boldly to his throne of grace when we need that strength. So rather than blaming somebody else, when we miss it, when we err, when we sin, that's where we go.
Yeah.
Because that's where the solution is at.
And it says it in Jude 1:15. To execute judgment on the people of the world, he will convict every person of all and ungodly things they have done, and for all the insults and ungodly sinners have spoken against him.
Yeah.
So, wow.
That is a wow.
Right?
W-O-W. Wow.
Yeah. And it says also in Jude 1:16, these people are grumblers and complainers, leaving only to satisfy their desires. They brag loudly about themselves, and they flatter others to get what they want.
Dang, there's some of our family members here. I don't say anything, but yeah, but that is so true. That is absolutely true. When we did the film, Beyond Physical Life, and by the way, if you have not seen that film, Beyond Physical Life, go to Amazon Prime, because it will be a blessing to you, and you'll begin to see some real revelations revealed that what happens when we leave this physical earth.
Yeah.
But in that film, I talked about my brother Brian, who died when he was 38 years old.
Right.
And it was really interesting because Brian was a, quote, self-proclaimed atheist, right? Now, here's what was so stupid about that. He said he was an atheist, but he was mad at God. He hated God because when he was 13 years old, he had a hamster that got sick. And he held it in his hands. He said, please, God, don't let my hamster die. And the hamster died.
Wow.
He gave up the ghost.
And he blamed God.
And he blamed God from 13 years old until he was 36.
Wow.
He blamed God. He hated God. Now, when he was on his deathbed, and I tell the full story in our film, Beyond Physical Matter. When I went into his room and he was already on a ventilator, and
it wasn't Beyond Physical Matter.
Oh, it was Beyond Physical Life.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Beyond Physical Life. I tell the whole full story about my brother. And when I walked into his room when he was on his deathbed, he was already on a ventilator. And I walked into his room and I said a very simple little prayer. And I let him know, Brian, God did not do this to you. And led him in a little prayer. And of course, he was still, he was in basically in a coma state. But I knew that he could hear me.
Right.
So after I prayed for him and left, the next day when we came back is when he resurrected, and he actually pulled the ventilator out of him, because when me and my parents walked in there, it was a cold blue. And then they told us what happened. And he said, finally, after they got him stabilized, we were in his room. He was sitting up in his bed. And he said, Don, he said, do you remember yesterday when you walked into my room? I said, yeah. He said, you prayed for me? I said, yes. He said, when you prayed for me, he said, I looked out of my bed, and at my feet, there were 3 dark figures in hoods dancing in a circle. Now, my brother didn't know anything about spirituality. He never went to church. He never read the Bible. He didn't know anything about that stuff. He said there was 3 black figures dancing around in a circle at the foot of my bed. He said, then I lifted up out of my body, and he said, I looked at my body, and it was laying there on the bed. And he said, when I got to the ceiling, he said, Jesus was standing there. And he said, he told me, Brian, it's not time for you to come home now. And he said he took his index finger, and put it in my chest. And he said, when he put it in my chest, I floated back down into my body. He said, when I got back into my body, I knew that I could take this thing out because I was going to live. Right?
Wow.
So all of that suffering that he did, because he blamed God, he decided at 13 years old that it was God's fault that the hamster died. So when we start playing the blame game, I mean, we're talking about eternal things.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I think people just need to stop and take a real look at, stop blaming other people.
Yeah.
And stop blaming God, and really take a look at yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
If we can shift our understanding, and I know we're running out of time here, so we're going to be closing it down, but if we can just realize how dangerous, we joke about it a lot and had some fun here, but in all reality, the blame game is a devastating game to play that really we don't want to play. And if, like Joseph, and that was a great point you brought out, because I hadn't even really thought about that, even during getting ready for the show. But if we could take on the attitude and the demeanor and the mindset of Joseph, then that will cause God's glory, like Apostle Thompson always says, keeps God's glory in our life, and that's where manifestations begin to go.
Amen for that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our show podcast today. It has been an excellent time spending with you. We look forward to seeing you on every podcast, because we're going to have something dynamic on each show. So I'm your host, Don Boyer.
And I'm Melinda Boyer.
Saying we love you, we appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.